I'm Brinley Nielsen, and these are my footsteps through history. The Stewart Mine ran from 1885 to 1974. It was the deepest shaft at 4,600 feet until the Mount Con exceeded that depth, eventually reaching 5,300 feet. The Stewart, who was named after her discoverer, was a producer of both silver and copper. The engine room was made out of brick, identifying it as a William A. Clark mine. It was constructed in 1898, which cost less than $9,000. Unlike the Orphan Girl, the Stewart was known as an unbearably hot mine to work in. It was known as the Chinese Laundry. Mount Con was originally named Mountain Consolidated Mine, but immigrants coming to America looking for work at the mines in Butte could not pronounce Consolidated. Mount Con was probably most famous as the mine that made Butte a mile high and a mile deep. It stood over a mile high and a mile deep and was the deepest on the Butte Hill. Mount Con, which operated from 1886 to 1974, was one of the biggest copper producers in the industry and one of the longest-lasting mines in Butte. The day that Mount Con closed, many Butte miners said that mining was dead in Butte. Many miners in Butte did not consider the open pit process or the block caving as real miners' work. The Belmont ran from 1900 to 1956. It was 4,300 feet deep. It was one of the hotter mines, which was rejected by miners from northern climates, but welcomed to muckers from Mexico and other tropical Latin American countries. They often looked for work here, just as the Irish flocked to Mount Con. The Belmont was a copper mine. Tons of red ore was hauled up through the nearly 70-year-old headframe, which originally stood at the Cora. The steel headframes were often built directly over the existing wooden headframe, which would continue to operate until the new structure was functional. Not a day of work was lost. The Orphan Girl ran from 1875 to 1956 and is 3,200 feet deep. Even though it ran for about 80 years, the Orphan Girl was never a headline-making mine, but nevertheless was a solid producer of silver, zinc, and lead. Originally a Marcus Daly mine, the Orphan Girl was eventually purchased and operated by the Anaconda Company after years of litigation. The Orphan Girl was orphaned because it stood alone to the west of Butte's other mines. An adjacent shaft was named the Orphan Boy just to give her some company. The boy's underground network of tunnels was eventually incorporated into the workings of mine. Because there was such good ventilation, the inner works of the mine was 55 degrees to 65 degrees Fahrenheit as compared to some of the hot boxes where temperatures often rose above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. She was a good mine to wrestle on. While no longer producing ore, the Orphan Girl serves as a home for the World Museum of Mining. The Orphan Boy now serves as a laboratory for the students of Montana Tech, the only underground lab on campus in North America. The original was one of the first quartz lodes on the hill. In fact, mining in Butte was initiated at this site. In 1856, the first known party of white explorers in the region arrived here and reported finding a shallow prospect hole which had been dug with a sharpened elkhorn. It was theorized that early Native Americans made these holes. From these humble beginnings, created a mine that would last from 1878 to 1940, would be 3,900 feet deep, and have a gallows frame that is 127 feet tall, that still remains today. While most of the head frames are unique, one-of-a-kind steel structures, those of the original and Stewart are identical in design. The only difference between the two is the Christmas card perched at the top of the structure. The tradition of decorating the head frames during the holidays was initiated decades ago with the placing of evergreen above the sheave wheels of one of the mines. But the spirited miners, always game for competition, turned the decorating into a contest until nearly every headframe was decked out with lights, signs, and greenery. Granite Mountain ran from 1887 to 1944 and was 3,700 feet deep. When first installed, the hoist was the largest in the world. Connected to the speculator located 200 yards from the south, the Granite Mountain was developed to strengthen the productive capacity of its parent mine. Instead, it nearly destroyed it. The disastrous speculator fire of 1917, the worst hard rock mining accident in the history of North America, actually began in the shaft of the Granite Mountain. Once ignited, it was only a matter of minutes before the entire lower half of the shaft was engulfed in flames with deadly smoke and gas permeating miles of underground workings. Those who could battered down concrete bulkheads that separated the tunnels from this mine from those of adjacent shafts. Many of the men escaped through the Badger and the Diamond. 163 were not so fortunate. Marcus Daly was one of the leading citizens in Montana and helped develop the copper mining industry. He was the founder of the Anaconda Copper Mining Company and became known as one of the Copper Kings for his success. Marcus Daly was born in 1841 in County Cavan, Ireland. His family was poor and he was one of 11 children. With little chance in Ireland, he moved to America at age 15. After a succession of menial jobs in Brooklyn and New York, he decided to seek better opportunities in the West. After years of experience in California, Nevada, and Utah in the mining industry, Daly and his friends Hagen and Hearst created the Anaconda Copper Mining Company in 1881. At the time, smelting was not an American industry, or was shipped all the way to Wales, England for processing. Daly saw this as inefficient and developed the smelting process in America in the nearby town of Anaconda, which became his company town. Marcus Daly's success was shortened, and he died on November 12, 1900. William A. Clark was one of the three Copper Kings. Clark was 24 when he first came to Butte. He was born of Scottish-Irish parents on a Pennsylvania farm. His family moved to Iowa, where William continued his education that included 2 years of legal study at Iowa Wesleyan College. He worked as a school teacher in Missouri and fought in the Confederate Army before deciding to seek his fortune in the West. With a partner, he staked a claim near Bannock. They built a log cabin and sluices, and after only a year, sold their property for $2,000 each. For Clark, the initial stake would grow into a fortune of $47 million and make him one of the richest men in the world. A native of New York, having been born there December 5, 1869, Fritz Augustus Heinze was the fifth child of a prosperous importer and enjoyed the advantage of wealth and security. Educated in Brooklyn and abroad, he attended Columbia University's School of Mines. After he graduated, his father offered him a fund to study in Germany. Fritz, though, had his heart set on the West. 3 months later, he arrived in Butte. By 1892, 22-year-old Fritz used a combination of family and outside money to start a new company, the Montana Ore Purchasing Company. Fritz became the last Copper King. Following my footsteps through history, I had the privilege to go down into Montana Tech's underground mining lab, and I got to see how mining was done in the early days and how it was done now. So just from learning about the importance of mining in Butte history and how it's important in my heritage, I'm very interested in going into mining at Montana Tech.